Welcome to Diced Onion, a Warrior podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Angelo Fiores. That is Mike Haggerty. Welcome to our episode by episode look at the incredible show Warrior. If this is your first time watching, I suggest you go back to episode 1 and start from there rather than starting with this episode. But if you've been a repeat viewer, and I know we've got a few, welcome back. Mike, we are halfway through season 2 with the conclusion of today's podcast, and it actually puts us at halfway through the entire series to this point as well.
Yeah, that's right. We're at the halfway point. And as we said last week, it looks like that we're not going to be on Cinemax anymore on Max. It's going to be on Netflix.
Yeah, starting in only a couple of weeks. So that's good news to get more people on board with this show.
Yeah, I'm excited for it.
Me too.
Yeah, more people should be into the show. It is one of the most underrated programs on TV.
I feel like I'll start watching it more if it ends up or when it ends up on Netflix. I don't know why. Maybe because I just access Netflix more often, or it's just easier for me to interface with. I'm not sure, but I feel like I'll start watching it more often now, like more repeat often.
Yeah, it's easy to binge on Netflix, and that's, as the kids say, they're going to be binging this program, hopefully, as the kids say.
Right on, Pops. Let's get into this episode then, shall we? It is, as we said, season 2, episode 5. It is called Not for a Drink, a Fuck, or a Goddamn Prayer. What a great title. Original air date, October 30th, 2020. And the episode starts off with Lee Yong, and he is training. He is solo. It's kind of a semi-darkened room, and he's doing his thing. And can I just say, the actor Joe Taslim, he's in awesome shape, man. I mean, that's, he's an actor playing a character, but the bodies and the physiques that these dudes possess are legit. That's not CGI, Mike.
Right, and it's not like they're overly muscular either. They're just sort of thin. They have sort of what would be I would consider like a typical gymnastic build. And gymnasts, I think, are some of the best athletes out there. You're going to find few people with less body fat content, but they're not like overly muscular, not like goonish. They're not goons. They're just like very lean, very muscular.
Their martial arts, necessitate them to be kind of, requires them to be a little bit more agile than, say, a bulkier dude. So he's, I guess you would say, not necessarily, I mean, he's built, but I would say he's more fit, right? Just perfectly fit than anything else. And it's just impressive to watch these guys not only be excellent actors, but also to be able to dedicate as much time that's necessary, on your fitness to have the physique needed to score a role like that.
Yeah, I think I could be wrong, but I think he might have been a stuntman.
All the more power to him, man, because it's hard to have that kind of, to be in that kind of shape consistently, and then also to do other things at a high level. So we digress a little bit already, but here's Lee Yong, and in comes Mei Ling, and the mood changes instantly.
Yeah, we see that their relationship is kind of pivoted. It went from just purely just romantic to now they're not looking at each other the same way anymore. There's a bit of contention there because he doesn't necessarily like the way she's doing things, and she wants to make sure that he's on board because she's the boss and she wants everyone, including him, to fall in line. So the topic turns to her brother, and Lee Yong is again, he's not happy with what she's done. He brings up the past about their fight. And I thought this was kind of interesting because Mei Ling she expresses regret. This is the first time, at least I can recall, that she seems upset about how things were handled. About how basically she ordered her brother. No, not basically. She did order her brother's death, and she does express some guilt about this. I thought that was pretty interesting.
I thought it was interesting from a couple different perspectives because, one, she knows that he's not happy with the way she's handling things. She said so as much when she first enters the room. And we saw it ourselves last week during their last conversation where she was inside the carriage and he was left outside, sort of proverbially looking in with his head down, possibly questioning, what the hell am I doing here, right? But being the straight thinker that I think that he is, and he recognizes both sides of a situation better than many actors or many characters in this show. He recognizes that she is troubled by her decision to kill Ah-Sam, and he does tell her that maybe he's caring. He still cares, even though he's annoyed by her at the moment. And he says, "Go ask for forgiveness. He is your family. Maybe he will still forgive you." And she says, "No, he won't. I wouldn't forgive me." So, that is something that her knowing her brother better than Lee Yong knows her brother, speaking from experience, she kind of says, I don't think that there's any hope there for that to kind of happen, right? And she also does backtrack a little bit and say to Lee Young, you have no idea what he did to me. Like, she still sort of tries to justify her decision while at the same time, for the first time, outwardly expressing the regret.
Right. And she's looking for sort of a rationalization, a justification, which I think that's actually a sign of guilt, in my opinion, that if you're looking for a rationale, then obviously you haven't done something right.
I agree. She's looking for Lee Young not only to be on board with what she's doing for the future, but also to sort of get the pat on the shoulder that it was okay what happened before, and you did what you had to do. But that's not what he's saying. When you're telling someone you can go ask for forgiveness, that means he's also seeing you as having done something that you don't ask for forgiveness when you've done the right thing. How about that?
Yeah, that's
Right?
a very good point. You don't
Yeah.
need forgiveness when you've done the right thing.
There you go. So we move on now to the aftermath of Mercer Steele. Remember, Sophie last week helped the Irish blow up the joint, and now here's Penny basically surveying the damage in silence. Smoke is, dust is in the air. It's a absolute disaster in the first light of day, and here comes Jacob, her assistant. We forgot about this guy. We haven't seen him in a few episodes. Her Chinese manservant, I guess. And the first thing she asks him while all this is going on is, "What is that awful smell?"
And this wasn't a very long scene, but it was a very impactful scene because we had everything came to light here, and that was because of Jacob. Jacob told her that what the smell was. It was opium.
Right.
And he then laid it all out for her that her former boyfriend with the hop weed, the tong, was using her business to store opium. And now she knows. And she's probably right. And she's probably
boxes.
Right. And I don't know if she's assuming that that's connected to the bombing because it actually wasn't. But she doesn't know that at this point.
No. And he does tell her there was Hopway bodies there with the boxes hidden that we found. So she's starting to connect. She does realize, regardless of whether the explosion was connected, and I don't think she thinks so, Mike, simply because she knows what the Irish have been up to. That's why she hired Ah-Sam to begin with. So essentially, what's going on here now is not only did they not do the job she hired him to do, but they were trying to pull some moves behind her back. And, rightfully so, she should be livid.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. We move on now from Penny's troubles back to for the first time this episode, to the police department, to the police station. And here is Bill, and he is making his big announcement that is tonight's the night that the Fung Hai feels the hammer of the San Francisco Police Department. And this is where we get the title of the episode. Nobody stops after their shift, not for a drink, a fuck, or a goddamn prayer at church. And so that's where we get I like that they kind of interject the title of the episodes typically early on in the episode, Mike. I feel like they get it out of the way pretty quickly, and they did so again here, which really what this means, right, is it's time to go in there and crack some skulls for retribution for what they've done to Bill and his family.
But here's my question. Do you think that Bill wanted retribution, or do you think he wanted redemption? In other words, do you think he was doing this because he was mad, or because he feels bad because for what he put his family and, for that matter, Lee through?
Oh, it's all this is Bill's looking for some sort of catharsis here. There's no question about it. He wants to wipe away some of his mistakes, right? That most of the participants in this raid don't know about. So he's using his police department as his sort of whitewash, if you will, to help absolve himself of the misdoings he did that put him in this boat to begin with the Feng Hai home invading him, forcing his family out,
Right.
and bringing to light, at least to the people that matter in his life, that Bill is as crooked as the day is long.
Yeah. And
As
then
the
in
saying goes.
as the kids say. And then in stumbles Lee, and he's not looking too good.
Nah, he's
And
hungover, ain't he?
he's hungover, and he is the only one in that room besides Bill that actually knows the truth.
Right.
And he's not going to let Bill forget it. And he's pretty upset with Bill, and understandably so. And you don't know where he's at, because clearly Lee is not feeling the same towards the Tong, or is not upset with the Tong like Bill is.
And it's
He's
because,
upset
like
with
you
Bill.
said, he knows better. I think Bill was hoping that the ass whipping that Lee took from the Tong would be enough motivation,
Right.
regardless of why it happened, to have him on board. But Lee is smarter than that, and he can see through it. And don't forget, he even asked Bill, "Did you tell the rest of them why the Feng Hai attacked your house?"
Yeah.
And again, Bill's trying to turn it around. You know how Billy's really good at like flipping
Yeah.
the subject around and making you think, all right, maybe I am the asshole here. But Lee's not having it this time.
And Bill, maybe like some addicts, has a way of trying to turn the situation around. You know, he's trying to keep the guilt off of him and trying to keep it on the Feng Hai. And they're the bad guys here. But Lee's not having it. Lee's not giving in to him.
Exactly. And Bill's
Much
been
like his
very
wife.
exactly. And Bill's been very good at what you just described, the whole putting the onus on somebody else, anybody else throughout his addiction, because otherwise he wouldn't have been able to get as far as he did with his bullshit. It would have, his luck would have ran out a lot sooner, and he would have made some other kind of mistake. But so he was obviously very good at stiff arming the consequences for quite some time until this avalanche of things have come down upon him. But either way, regardless of who's in the right in this discussion between Bill and Lee, Bill takes the position of the superior here and says, just be sober tonight or we're going to have a goddamn problem. You got that? And that's when Lee still, I think he asks Bill, oh, he says, is that an order?
Yeah, and that's a little disrespectful.
Yeah, and Bill says, yes, it's a fucking order. And that's where the scene ends. I made that note over there. I was like, wait, what does that mean? Oh, right. Bill yells at all right, we're back to Penny's now. It's still, we're in the rubble there, right? Penny's in their office, actually, at this point, going through a bunch of papers. And here comes Ah-Sam, his first time, and he's all apologetic. What did he say? I came as soon as I heard.
Yeah, which is, you say that, you hear that when you heard that someone's injured or someone's sick. Now, when you find out your ex-girlfriend's
blew up.
your store blew up. So, oh dear, I'm as soon as I heard. I never thought about that. That was funny.
Yeah. She knows why he's actually there.
Yeah.
Right. And you could see that she's very cold to him in a way when he first walks in, and she's kind of seething a little bit. It's boiling inside of him until she finally calls him out on the opium, and she says, "Your opium is gone."
Yeah, and much like
guys.
Lee, right, and much like Lee did with Bill, she's calling him on his nonsense. She's calling him
Right.
on his bullshit, and she's
Exactly.
basically calling him out. And we've maintained that Penny is the moral center of this show. And here's another example of it. She just wants to be a businesswoman. She wants to run an honest business. Now you can say that, yeah, she did hire gangsters to protect her business, but maybe she had to do what she had to do. That's the way I view it anyway. And she figured, even though she was dealing with gangsters, that it was a straightforward proposition. You protect my business, I give you money. She didn't expect them to try and store their opium in her business. That came out of left field to her. And she now feels pretty used by him. And Ah-Sam is in the wrong. There's no way to say it. He was wrong.
No doubt. And she says so as much. You used me. She uses those words pretty much exactly. And let me just, for a second, before we advance in this scene, this is continuing with the theme of this show which has sort of similar themes from scene to scene at times. Same thing happens here, Mike, and you kind of just pointed it
Yeah.
out, right? The other moral center of the episode, Lee on one scene calling out Bill on his bullshit. Now you got Penny in the next scene, the other moral center of the show, and she's calling out Ah-Sam on his bullshit. And she says it pretty much, right? You used me. And your men are dead. So now he also knows that the Hopway guards that were on site were also killed. And she interestingly tells him that Jacob had them removed before the police arrived.
Yeah, but she didn't do it for him.
Right. He thanked her. Interestingly, he thanked her.
Yeah.
And that's when she says, I didn't do it for you. And this is where she now, I think, realizes her own mistakes in the aftermath. Kind of like how Sophie realized her mistakes immediately after she blew up the joint at the end of the episode. Penny now in the aftermath is seeing her mistake and even hiring Ah-Sam to begin with, but that took her a little longer than immediate.
That's a very interesting point. Both sisters realized that they screwed up after the fact.
Yeah. And that's when she tells him that he better get out of there now before she screams. Right. So she's really had enough of her.
And that's a relationship gone bad.
Yeah. Another interesting relationship. One, I guess you knew kind of might have existed in the ether of the universe of this show is Leary and Chief Flanagan, two characters you haven't seen together in any part of this series to this point.
Not that I recall.
No, having their own little conversation while Leary's eating over at I guess he's at the Banshee, and Flanagan is pretty much there with the topic of Mercer Steel on his mind.
Right, and this is continuing with the theme that you just said a second ago, a sort of a similar theme. I'm going to call back to Lee and O'Hara on this one because O'Hara is trying to blame it all on the Fung Hai, and here Chief Flanagan comes in and he says basically to Leary, cut the crap, no more bombings. And then Leary turns it around on him, not too dissimilar to what O'Hara did in trying to shift the blame. And Leary, although you could maybe make the point that maybe Leary has a bit more of a point than Bill does when he says that he basically says, this is on you. When you push people to starvation, they're going to fight back. And not that there's ever a justification for violence or bombing, but you can kind of see Leary's point in the context of this show. Not in real life, obviously, but in the context of the show. Yeah, I kind of get where Leary's coming from. And he turns it around and says that Flanagan's the problem. And if I can go even a little deeper on this one, this goes back to last week's episode. We had that Old West showdown with Ah-Sam on the street. And Ah-Sam said, why don't you blame the people who aren't hiring you?
Right.
So we're looking at justifications, right, in this episode, and maybe a little bit of a attempt at redemption. But Leary's not looking for redemption. Leary's just like saying, I'm just reacting to what you're doing. Leary's not a forgiveness type. He's not wanting it and not offering it.
But Mike, and all that you say is absolutely spot on. I agree with everything. Leary does the first thing that the addict or the guilty tries to do, which is feigns innocence. I don't know anything about that. Right? It's the first thing he says, and then turns it around on Flanagan, and it's out of my hands. The city is going to burn. City Hall caused all of this, all those things that you say that he was saying. But at the end of the day, the blood is going to be on the hands of you and the politicians, Leary says to Flanagan, and he's not wrong, but he's also culpable in it too.
I don't disagree with what you just said, but I will just say that there's the difference between Leary and Bill in this situation is that Bill, I think, genuinely believes, or at least wants to believe, that he is innocent in this situation. Leary knows that he is the hand that is striking the match, but he's just saying that ultimately, he's just the gun and he's being pointed in that direction. So I view Leary and Bill a little bit different. Sort of, Sam, I see what you're saying and I agree, but Leary's a little bit different just because Leary has no illusions about who he is.
Yeah, but I feel like that's a little bit, if that's how he feels about himself, it's a little bit disingenuous because he's absolutely not just the gun. He's also the shit stirrer. He stirs the pot too. He's the one out on the streets riling people up with his rhetoric and stuff. So he is part of it, just not the government sanctioned part of it. How about that? And I think that if he were an arm of the government, the chief of police and city hall wouldn't have a problem at all with what he was doing, if you get my point, because it still helps them, because it helps the establishment, because it continues to stoke the flames of the anti-Chinese, opinion in the air, so to speak.
Well, if I may, there's a theory in psychology that bad guys never think of themselves as the bad guy, whether it's real or fictional, right? Even if you're an
Hitler loved
historical
dogs.
and yeah,
And
well, there's an
children.
example. Hitler probably felt he was doing the right thing. Any monster, Hitler was a monster, but in his sick mind, he thought he was doing the right thing. And Leary, in his mind, he thinks he's doing the right thing. Because a bad guy never thinks of themselves as the bad guy.
How many times did Tony Soprano say to his shrink, "I'm a good guy. I love my family,
Right.
and I love ducks." So he thought that absolved him of all the other shit he did for 65 episodes or 85
25
episodes.
Years since the premiere of that.
Amazing,
oh my God.
Right?
Oh my
but
God.
I think because of a show like that, we have a show like this one that we're talking about right
Definitely
now.
Sopranos.
No doubt about it.
Sopranos broke ground on that. They created the anti-hero television character.
Absolutely, because this is the same dynamic in this show, right? We've got the good guys and we've got the bad guys here, just as much as the Sopranos did with the FBI and the law enforcement, and then the mob, and then the rival mobs, right? We had good guys and bad guys in the mob part, and we have good guys and bad guys on the cop part, and then the lines were always blurred, just as they are on this show. So there's a lot of tips of the cap to that structure that was initially introduced by David Chase and the incredible writers of that show. But that's for another podcast. Ah-Toy is on the way to Sonoma. She's in the horse-drawn carriage, and from her window, she can see the girls working the land, right? And it's just what scenery, right? It's pretty vast. It's a gorgeous scene, right? And Nellie is there. Nellie greets her, Nellie Davenport, and starts showing her around.
Yeah, it's a I don't know where they actually shot it, but it was a beautiful.
I think South Africa.
Really?
Yeah.
I just assume everything's shot in Canada these days. It seems to be the case. But
Vancouver.
Vancouver's become everything. Vancouver's New York. Vancouver is Europe.
That's true.
But yeah, it's beautiful scenery, and Ah-Toy she seems like she's blown away, not by the scenery so much, but how the girls seem to be having an existence and seem to be living. They're working, but it's a good life. It's an honest life. And I think it's becoming clear that she's kind of being hit with this guilt, because maybe she's realizing, and this just occurred to me, maybe she's realizing that she's not necessarily the good guy or the best option for the girls. Whereas I think previously she's always justified her actions as she was creating the best life for them that they could have. Granted, she was involved in trafficking and prostitution, but she was better than the average pimp, I guess. And I guess that was her justification.
That's a great point, Mike. And the way I kind of saw that scene was similar, where she's overwhelmed by seeing the girls looking happy while they work, right? And Nellie explains they work the land, but it's like a purifying kind of existence, right? Where they're becoming something else, evolving from who they were when they first got there. And so they look like genuine happiness. And like you said, Ah-Toy always said, my girl's happy. They stay because they're happy. But were they ever really happy in her mind now, when she sees what a real happiness can look like, something she may not have even felt or have truly experienced in a long time? When was the last time Ah-Toy was really happy? Right? Her life is pimping, dealing with the cops, bribes, payments, slashing people, killing people. That's not a happy existence. That's got to wreck you up here. So she sees that, and probably also sees a lot of herself in these girls, probably wishing she could instantly be on that land and away from all the shit that is actually her life.
Right. Yeah. And I completely agree. I think that Ah-Toy is sort of, I think this episode really, a lot of people are realizing who they are, really. Maybe coming to terms with who they really are in this universe,
and all at the hands of other people, right? In this way, Nellie's not calling her out necessarily, but through her own existence of showing her around, right? Her own plans, whatever she's got going on. This alone is enough for Ah-Toy to, in a sense, call herself out, as because of the reflection of what she sees is an exact opposite of what she is doing in a sense for
Right.
these girls.
Right.
So I think it's dawning on her that she is on maybe a little bit on the wrong side, because ultimately what's happening through her own business affairs, Mike, whether it's the killing or whether it's the brothel, it all comes at the cost of someone else's flesh. So Ah-Toy is, while one of the, the way I see her as one of the good guys in a sense on this show, she's not without faults and sin, and she knows
Yeah.
the difference is she knows it.
Yeah, and she's a gray character, a gray area.
Right.
I would say her and a guy like Chow, or I think of her and Chow together in that they operate in that sort of nether zone between all the different worlds, and they're not necessarily they're not a good guy, but they're
Right.
not a bad guy. They're not out and out evil. Like I'd say, a guy like Zing is probably just a completely malicious character.
And psycho, and we'll get to that.
And
We'll get
and
to that guy a little
we
bit,
are gonna
right?
talk about Zing today. But then we see A-Toy become overcome with emotion, and she runs off to
Right.
an area, I guess, where they're making wine. I guess that's what they're doing here.
Right. So
And she's over
vineyard.
a vineyard, yeah. And then she's over by the barrels, and Nellie follows her, and kind of Nellie points out that this was her favorite spot and in the whole vineyard, and A-Toy talks about her grandmother, and this reminds her of her grandmother, and
Right.
I took this as A-Toy just sort of coming to terms like what we just discussed, like she's finally starting to realize that maybe she's not necessarily the best option for these girls,
Yeah.
and then Nellie kind of comforts her, and she gives her a little bit of wine, and we see a new relationship form.
Yeah. Didn't see from the file this under. I didn't see this one coming. Department. Okay. First, as Nellie explains, that they make wine there, and that these barrels will help transform the grape juice into a product that they sell and they market, and that she also explains that the wine itself helps support the workers and the land and the girls and the lifestyle, so much so that she wants to expand into other areas. And that's when because she was asked by Ah-Toy, how do you pay for all this? And she talks about how her husband gave her a bunch of money, or left her a bunch of money when he passed away, and also that the wine helps sustain them financially. And then that's when, like you described, she gives her some wine. They're awfully close to each other, and then the kiss, and it's
Yeah.
a pretty good one.
We knew A-Toy was into women.
Right.
And,
We didn't know that.
We didn't know that about Nellie, but now we know that about Nellie, and A-Toy and Nellie are making out in the vineyard. So, well, there's a new relationship there.
I think Nellie's probably been burned enough by men at this point that she's not interested in them. And like you said, we knew about Ah-Toy. Very, very interesting.
And we knew Nellie had no love lost for her late husband. So
no. And now it makes you wonder, like, where does this new twist take us? Because you've got Ah-Toy feeling regret now for, the initial feelings of regret for how she's been living, I guess, in a sense, doing business. And now these new, I don't know, sprinklings or initial feelings for Nellie, I suppose.
Well, maybe Nellie will be her redemption. Maybe.
Maybe. And that's why I was wondering, where's this going to take us now and take them?
Maybe.
All right, back to Mercer Steele. I love that we keep coming back to Mercer Steele like every other scene, right? And now we had Jacob. He came by, filled her in on what the smell was. Then Ah-Sam comes by, and she gave him the news. And now her next visitor is the mayor.
You notice that, yeah.
Go ahead.
That each man that shows up is like
Jacob is
good, right? Jacob's good. He's the good one. And then here comes Ah-Sam, and he's not so good, but he's the star of the show, so you like him. And then here comes the worst of the worst.
Yeah, the one you like the least.
Yeah.
Like if this was a likability factor scale, like we would be at the bottom of it right now when the mayor walks in. And the first thing she asks him is, why are you here? Right. And he, I guess he's feigning concern, because we all know what a thorn in his side this entire Mercer Steele situation is. And of course, the first thing he asks her is how long to rebuild. And she gives him an answer of like 6 weeks, 8 weeks at the most, or something like that. And he starts really playing verbal games with her about delivering the steel contract. That's the way I wrote it down. Verbal games.
Yeah, and she points out that the contract is I think she said it's unbreakable or
Right.
he can't get out of it. And then he turned around and this is where he gave her a little bit of a jab. He goes, "Well, on your advice, I hired a lawyer."
That's right, because she told him that in the last episode. You should probably
Right.
consult one, and so he did.
Right.
And so he's coming in there to now flex some of his muscle that he has, legal muscle, from the standpoint of the lawyer armed him a bit with some information that if she can't deliver, that kind of kills the contract, right?
Right.
And or if there's a reason why she can't deliver, it kills the contract. And at the same time, um, he just flat out tells her he's going to pull the contract. So it's all coming crashing down on Penny in two moves: an explosion, and now the mayor.
Her husband and the
And
men
it's her
who
husband.
and the men who were supposed to look out for her former boyfriend and the
Right.
guy she hired to protect her business let her down. And her husband, who is theoretically supposed to support her and look out for her, is actively trying to destroy her business. He just wants his wife back.
Yeah, he even says something to her like, "I doubt you'll find a buyer now."
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm not selling. I'm going to continue on, right? She's going to continue the fight because that's who she is, and she's not going to let anybody keep Penny Mercer down. I use her maiden name because she's hardly Penny Blake, right?
No,
In any sense of the word. But and she begs him now, right? When he kills the deal, and he says, "No, I got no choice but to pull this thing from you. I don't, I'm going to exercise my legal right now." And he really now starts to talk down to her and essentially spells it out that this is over. And he leaves with, "It'll be good to have you home again." Essentially, you can stop playing
right.
Mrs. Boss and you come home and you play Mrs. Mayor again.
Yeah, this has all been really cute, but let's come home now.
Yeah, dear, he says. So the scene ends with the camera pulling out on Penny, and it almost seems like she personally is in as ruinous shape as the surroundings that she's in.
Yeah, that would
That's the
seem
sense
so.
I got there.
That's good. That was a good. I didn't pick up on that. Good to you.
Thank you.
I didn't pick it. Yeah, that was a good visual.
Yeah, it was. It was a great shot. Excellent cinematography there, and it struck me, and I made a note of that. And I just kind of enjoyed the way that scene looked, and I felt like it was just like Penny may as well have been some of those ashes. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're seeing
Yeah.
the wreckage of her life and the wreckage of her, so to speak.
Yeah, and the mayor was kind of like that last kick in the teeth, right? That kind of knocked her down a little bit here, more than maybe more than we expected from a character who's shown herself to be pretty strong to this point, if not hard headed.
Right.
Yeah, she's very much like Ah-Sam in that way. She's hard headed too, but in different ways. All right, Young Jun. I haven't seen him in a while. First time this episode, and he's angry. He just wants to go dice the Irish for screwing up their opium deal because they're stuck. All right, they paid for a bunch of opium. They were hiding the opium. They were selling the opium, but now they have none of it, and there's a cash shortfall they got to make up, and they're in trouble. That's when Hong shows up and says, "I'm in."
Hong is great comic relief. He is.
He really is. I'm starting to like him, and he's a new character, and I'm liking him a lot right away.
Yeah, he's. I think everyone is required to have a favorite ancillary character on the show, and I think he might be mine at this point.
What I love about this part when he shows up and just goes, "I'm in," and he's like all like happy about it, right? Like there's a serious situation here, and he comes in with his like levity, and the question is, "What the fuck are you talking about?" And he goes, "Well, I don't really know the details, but," and then he like proceeds to detail the whole thing. That's what made me laugh. But ultimately, what it comes down to is that he wants to help.
Right.
Yeah.
And we get the repeated line here in this scene too, which is we can
batshit crazy. He's batshit crazy. The new guy's batshit crazy.
We can work with crazy.
And then they toast to that this time. And end scene right there. That was good stuff, right? Um, the next scene is Nellie and Ah-Toy, and I think we conflated scenes a little bit, Mike, when we talked about Ah-Toy and Nellie's previous scene together, where this was actually where she explained how she pays for everything, and Ah-Toy ran off to that whole wine scene that we talked about.
Yeah, we got a little ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, we did. And I kind of felt like we were, but it didn't matter because it's ultimately just a continuation of that same conversation. And this is where Ah-Toy details that she got a little bit more emotional about it all because it reminded her of her grandmother's farm in China. And she hadn't thought of her grandmother in a long time. So obviously that was like a good time in her life. And her life has been so overtaken by what she's involved in that it's been forever since she's had a moment to reflect on a good time. And she thought of it and it made her just, kind of overwhelmed, and this is when they start talking about the barrels of wine and they lean in for that kiss.
Yes. And Nellie and Ah-Toy have a new friend.
And right, exactly. So we conflated scenes there. We mixed them in, but it was literally just a continuation broken up by another scene. So no harm, no foul there by us. Moving on now, we were just mentioning Zing a couple minutes ago, and it's delivery time. Chow shows up with Zing's knives, right? Remember, he gave him that half payment a while back, and here is Chow delivering. But we know Chow's up to something because of all the pieces he put into place last week with Ah-Toy and with Bill and the sword and the 2-day delay. And remember, we also know that Bill said in the beginning of the episode, tonight's the night we go in there. Okay, so this is all of that plan coming together,
right? And Chow shows up with delivery men, and this is where I don't know if you noticed this or thought of this.
It's quick.
The homage, right? You know where one of the delivery men, obviously it was Lee Yong. He's in a disguise, and that reminded me. And I don't know which Bruce Lee movie it was, but there was one where Bruce Lee showed up somewhere as a telephone man with glasses, and I think he might have had a fake beard. He's wearing a jumpsuit, and this reminded me of that, like Bruce Lee going into the bad guy's lair as a phone repairman in this case. But in this case, it's Lee Young showing up as just a random delivery guy.
Right, working with Chow to bring the goods.
And,
yes.
And now we know that Chow and at least Lee Young, and if not the entire time, but Lee Young and the police are all on the same page in this situation.
Definitely not the entire Tong, Mike. Definitely just Lee Yong, because remember he and Chow had that heart to heart in a sense over noodles. Remember at the outdoor noodle place, eating out of the bowl, and that's when he said, "I have a plan," and Lee Yong was willing to listen. So Lee Yong is in on this. Ah-Toy is in on this. Chow obviously is in on this. The cops are in on this. There's 4 different parties here in on this, all with a beef against Zing ultimately, because that's what everybody's problem here is. It's Zing. That's Bill's problem, right? That's Lee Young's problem. That's in a way, it's definitely Chow's problem, and maybe not necessarily directly Ah-Toy's problem, but Ah-Toy gets a benefit out of this because now no one looks at her as the swordsman.
Right. It definitely helps her situation.
So now the delivery is completed, right? You got these guys, okay, take it in back. And so the delivery guys are walking these cases of knives, including Lee Young in disguise, to the back room. Zing pays now. This is where he gives Chow his money, but he in fact tries to overpay. We know how Zing is. He's very imposing, and he told Chow an episode or 2 back, once someone works for me, they end up only working for me. So he overpays here, and I feel like that's him stepping over that line to start imposing that.
Yeah, well, he doesn't want to just do business with Chow. He wants to own Chow.
Right.
He wants Chow in the family. And well, he says that. He literally says that in this scene. And Chow actually lays it on the line. And Chow, look, credit for guts, because he says flat out, because he says, "Look, I don't like you. I don't like doing business with you."
Right.
And he says it, and I'm like, wow, that's pretty. Even if you have a horde of cops and you got Lee Young nearby, that still is kind of a ballsy thing to say. So kudos to Chow for just saying it. I don't like you.
It's funny because then Zing responds with, "Well, what if I don't like your terms?" And Chow's response was, well, tough shit, which is also a ballsy response to the guy that thinks he can do whatever he wants. And Zing suspects now at this point. You can kind of see a switch flip in his head there. And he gets the feeling that maybe Chow is kind of up to something because he's like, you're almost a little too ballsy for your own good right now. Like it was one of those sorts of things. And at that same time, the delivery's happening in the back room. And this is when Lee Yong gets involved.
Yeah, and then we see that Fung Hai is starting to suspect these delivery guys are not who they might be, and a fight breaks out in the back, and we see it's pretty violent, right? The guy gets stabbed right through the skull, which that's pretty intense.
Yeah.
And
then the scene cuts back to Chow and Zing. And this is the whole I don't like you. I don't like your tone. And if you want to do business with me, you know where to find me. And he decides this is where he's going to walk out. Right. And that's when they grab him. That Zing is not going to let Chow leave right now. A, he kind of suspects a little something. And B, Chow's trying to dictate terms to him. And Zing, nobody dictates terms to Zing, especially not in his house, right? And that's when he busts out the "we do business with family" line, and they grab him. We cut away from that scene to the cops waiting outside. This is the first time now that we see the police waiting outside. And while that's happening, because they're waiting to strike, right? Bill says to them, as soon as we see Chow, we go in. Right. So, but that doesn't happen. This is where they throw Chow down, as you described, and they pour that bear's milk down his throat, man. And it is a nasty, nasty scene. I wrote down that this almost looked like they were waterboarding him.
Yeah, very similar to water. Yeah, very good. Yeah, waterboarding. I'd imagine that probably is a similar situation. And Zing also has a darkly humorous line here where he says, where he's going after, he's getting involved in the fight. And he says to his men, hurt him badly, but don't kill him.
Right. Because he now wants to know what the hell's going on. But that, again, you're jumping a little ahead there, too, right? Because we're back into the back room, and this is where the Fung Hai come in, and the mini brawl really happens again, because these guards now see the dead. Right, they come in and they see dead, and like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And Chow knows, right, that it's all falling apart here, and it gets a little crazy because the guard comes in with the body and throws it down in front of everybody, and he says, "This motherfucker is Long Z," about Chow, and then Chow starts to get beat down hard.
Yeah,
like really hard.
Yeah, and either way, it's not going well for Chow right now. And is this the part where we see Lee Yong here? Probably, he's coming down the stairs.
He's still sneaking around because his goal was to plant the sword, and he actually hadn't done it yet. And this is where he finds his spot, and at the same time, Zing finds him. Right, because now all hell's broken loose over here, and it's almost like every man for himself between Lee Yong and Chow. Right. And that's when he orders his guards to beat up Chow but keep him alive. Cops are still outside. These are quick cuts now. The cops are still outside. Lee Yong tries to run off. Chow is being beaten. Like, this happens cut to cut to cut. And he does a good job of fighting back for a minute.
Yeah, he's got some skills.
Yeah. Lee Yong on his way out now, trying to get on his way out. He's doing his Lee Yong thing, fighting his way out. And that's when Zing corners him, right?
Yeah, and this is another fight that I was looking forward to.
Before the fight happens, we see Chow, and he looks like he's cornered and he's in trouble. And that's when he pulls out that little handgun that he keeps in his sleeve. And he fires it, and he shoots one person down, and then the chick comes up and says, "Well, you're out of bullets, sucker," because it's like a one-shot pistol. And then he pulls out another one and shoots her with a second pistol. That's when the cops, and the cops hear the gunshot, and Bill says, "That's our cue," and boom, the cops storm the place, and now it's out of control madness, and cut away back to the fight you've been waiting for, Mike. Zing and Lee Yong finally about to face off. And I love the exchange of lines here.
I was going to say, there's some good lines here.
Yeah, there's a good line here. Which line you want to take, Zing's or Lee Young's?
I'll say Zing's line. He goes, I always wondered who was better between the two of us.
I never really wondered, Lee Young says. What a great line. Lee Yong, the most confident character, calm, cool, and confident. That's him. He's the three C's. And Zing says, well, humor me. Because once I kill you, and he details to him what he's going to do. He says, I'm going to kill you, then I'm going to go see Mei Ling, and then I'm going to rape her, and then I'm going to kill you. And
he's going to rip her heart out, and then he's going to piss in the hole.
Yeah. That it's crazy the stuff that he says, and then they fight, right?
And
this is when they start fighting.
Right, and there's another good line that comes up a little bit deeper into the fight that it might have been one of my favorite lines of the episode because Lee Yong at first they're kind of evenly matched and they're going back and forth. And Lee Yong eventually starts to overtake Zing and he's starting to beat him up and kick his ass a little bit. Right. And Zing is on the ground. He's bleeding. He gets up. He goes, I'm kind of mad at you.
Yeah. I'm getting kind of mad at you now. That's a great. Zing has so many great lines. I love the when the cops storm in and that's all going on. Lee Yong does the another Bruce Lee homage. He does a little with his collar, that thing with his button down collar that Bruce Lee used to do. I can't describe it, but it's very subtle.
Yeah.
Where he folds it over or whatever. So the cops are shooting. The cops are brawling. The Feng Hai are trying to fight back. We see that Lee is in the brawl there as well. And it's such a wild scene because there's so many things happening. It's almost like a Marvel movie. You don't know who it is. It's getting shot, getting thrown around, getting killed, getting punched, getting hit. What angle they're coming from? It's mayhem, right?
Yeah.
Lee Yong and Zing still going at it, and this great fight is finally culminating. And right at that part where Zing is kind of down and out, Lee Yong turns around and uses a line on him that we've heard a couple times now, which is "Be grateful for your pain. It means you're still alive."
Yes, right? A little callback to last week.
But Zing, as much as he's beaten, you can never count him out, Mike.
No.
And somehow or other, he manages to get the sword, and he's swinging that around now at Lee Yong. And this is where the entire crux of the plan finally comes together because Bill is nearby and he happens to see or hear and he jumps in there just as Zing is swinging the sword around and fires his gun.
Yep, and he nails Zing in the shoulder, which we know in the movie and in TV world, if you get hit in the shoulder, you're going to survive and you're going to live a normal life. A shot in the shoulder is never a big deal. Yeah, you'll be fine in like an hour. Take some pills, you're fine. And no one who ever dies. Meanwhile, in real life, if you got shot in the shoulder, at best, you'd be looking at months of rehab.
Right, exactly. But Chow, Zing, I get a feeling will be healthy enough to swing a sword again soon. But anyway, Zing shoots him. Zing gets shot by Bill while he's got the sword in hand, and now everyone's kind of standing still here, and Bill is barking orders, and this is when Lee Yong makes a move and real quick takes off running, and Bill's like, come back. Lee Yong's gone, right? So now it's just Bill and Zing. And Bill leans into Zing here. And I mean, this scene made me wince, Mike. Made me wince.
Oh, you mean with the
So he shot him in that shoulder that you were talking about, and he dug his thumb in there. Man, he stuck his thumb in there and he said, this is it. You come to my house, you threaten my family, and Zing can't do a thing, right? And he tells Zing that he is gonna suffer for this. He is going to suffer for this. And, this scene widens out, Mike, and very much like the Penny scene ended with ruins. This one's just got piles of bodies everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, the Fung Hai headquarters now looks like an abattoir, right? I mean, just blood and guts and bodies, slaughter everywhere. And at least 2 cops got killed in this melee too.
Yeah.
But the ones in the red shirts, not the main cops. That would never be killed. You wouldn't see Bill or Lee die. It's always the cops whose name you don't know, like in Star Trek.
The red shirts.
Shirt. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the red shirt. It's Captain Kirk, McCoy, and Spock, and Ensign Jones are headed down. Guess who's not coming back?
Right, Ensign Jones. All right, here comes Chief Flanagan. And this is the conversation where they begin to lay out the framing of the swordsman, as I call this, because we know damn well that this is a means to an end that's happening here that will suit everybody, but it's certainly not proper justice. Listen, should Zing be in jail for some shit? Absolutely. Anyway, so this is just a way to get him out of the picture without having to go through due process, I guess. Right. But while this framing of the swordsman is going on, of course, Lee is there, sober, I might add. And of course, he's questioning it all, as usual.
Of course he is. Yeah, of course he is.
Because he's inquisitive and he's a detective.
Yeah, and he's inarguably the best cop on the show. And he's saying that this doesn't add up. And Lee's just kind of says, can you just be happy for something for like 2 seconds?
Yeah,
just be happy. Just be happy.
The part that Lee starts to question is when Bill pulls out a watch that he claims was the property of the one of the dead McCormick, one of the 2 that were killed by Ah-Toy. But Bill pulls that watch out and says it was part of the evidence we found here. But we know that's definitely not the case. And that's when Lee's starting to be like, hey, this doesn't make any sense. And Bill says it doesn't make any sense because chinks don't make any sense. But Lee, again, as usual, scene ends with us fully understanding, Mike, that Lee ain't buying it. Once again, he's just not buying Bill's explanations about anything.
Yeah, he's the best cop on the show, and he doesn't buy it.
Yeah, and he knows Bill is one of the biggest bullshitters on the show.
Yeah.
All right, we're back to looks like Long Z headquarters because there's Lee Yong tending to some of his wounds that he suffered in what was a pretty hefty brawl with Zing, as well as with a few other a few other Fung Hai that he had to kill. And here comes Mei Ling now. Their previous scene, there was a lot of tension. Now she shows up. This was obviously done against her will. She wouldn't have known about this whole thing, but he tells her that the Bulls raided headquarters of Fung Hai and that Zing has been arrested. And she knew immediately that Chow was in on this.
Right. And from Lee Young's perspective, he was a problem. Zing was a problem that had to be dealt with. But from Mei Ling's perspective, she liked the muscle of the Fung Hai. And I guess it gave her a little bit of legitimacy in that world. I don't know. Maybe
that's when she started growing. That's when she started growing a set, was when she, created that alliance with the Fung Hai.
And now she's lost that alliance.
Right.
And she's upset. And we see, obviously the relationship of Ah-Sam and Penny is destroyed, but we see the relationship between Lee Young and Mei Ling is a little terse now. There's tension here. It's growing.
It's taken a ding. A couple of them now. He explains, listen, Zing was out of control. Okay. The Ducks now have their swordsman and their killer, and that should put an end to these raids that have threatened us all, at looming over us all to this point. But Mei Ling is clear, and she says, don't you understand that they're never going to leave us alone, right? They're just going to find the next reason to come after us. And, that's why she's mad at him now for going solo and going rogue, in a sense, because, you didn't listen. You didn't listen to me. You weren't listening to me, he said. So what was I supposed to do? And I hate how she does the same thing everyone else who's on the wrong in this show does. She tries to turn it around on him and says, well, maybe you should have spoken a little louder. Like, are you kidding me? Like, Mei Ling doesn't listen to anybody. She wasn't going to listen to him. She's on her power trip, but now it's Lee Young's fault for going and diffusing this
Right.
situation on his own
Yeah.
because she wouldn't have any part of it anyway.
Once again, shifting blame.
Yep. We're now on to the next scene. It's Young Jun and Ah-Sam, and they're talking about Happy Jack. I should have added in that previous scene where they were trying to figure out their plans about what they were going to do to make up for their opium shortfall. Maybe we can go to Happy Jack and ask him for some credit, right? And Young Jun was like, he ain't going to give us credit, remember? And Ah-Sam was like, no, that was different. We're customers now. He likes us. We have a relationship with him. But of course, this is the scene where Ah-Sam says, yeah, he said no. So Happy Jack is like, oh, I could just picture. We didn't get to see the scene. I'm sure they shot it and it ended up on the cutting room floor, Mike.
Yeah, I was disappointed. I wanted to see it.
I could totally picture Ah-Sam, hat in hand, by himself, showing up at Happy Jack's, surrounded by like the 4 guards that Happy Jack has, and Happy Jack from his position of power in the situation, having hand in the scene, saying something like, so you have problem now, you come back to me, Chinese boy. I could totally see that being a funny ass scene, and Ah-Sam really not even having the ability to be snappy and witty because this is like his Hail Mary. So I feel a little shortchanged. We didn't get to see that. But for brevity and clarity, they just told us, boom, it was a no, right? Now the scene cuts away and we see Chow taking the little girl, Hannah, away that we met a couple episodes back, right? Not the papa friend, but he's actually her papa. He took her away from the prostitute. I forget her name. And it's a very quick, a little bit of a heart-wrenching scene, but he takes her quickly and they are gone. And the scene is quickly over.
Right. We don't know yet what the scene has to do, how the scene is going to play out, but we have an idea.
Like, where's he taking her? All that kind of thing, right? What's happening here for this little girl? But clearly Chow, remember Chow asked Ah-Toy for a favor last episode too. So I'm starting to get a sense of where we're going with this. But before we can start thinking too long about it, Ah-Toy is helping out her other ward, Ah-Sam, and she wants no part of his impending betrayal of Father June plan, because that's really what this all is, right?
Yeah.
Trying to do these opium deals behind young Father June's back is all about betraying the old man. And she says, what are you guys crazy? Right. Yeah. And that'll, maybe, and I think Ah-Sam, this is where he says, Father June's decisions are the reason why we're in this corner. And she says, you think young June can do better? And he doesn't say anything. And then her light bulb goes off. And she says, oh, you can do better.
Look, she and Chow are the smartest characters on the show. They always see everything coming. They see how the angles play out before everyone else does, and she figures the situation out pretty quickly. She knows what Ah-Sam's goal is.
Right, to be running the show in a sense. And this is where she says to him again, another in a string of scenes where someone's getting called out on their bullshit. And this is Ah-Sam's second time now taking the verbal slap across the face, which is, you are more like Mei Ling than you care to admit, in a sense.
Yeah.
She says to him. And she's right. She's absolutely right. But she also punctuates it again, right? She's always got the good advice for Ah-Sam, which he never listens to. And she says to him, whatever this all is, it has to stop. And this is where Ah-Sam's witty again. So is that a no? Hard-headed bastard, right? So that scene is over, and we're back to Chow again with the little girl, and it becomes crystal clear to us what's happening now, Mike, with Hannah.
Yeah, Ah-Toy went to Nellie to work out some adoption arrangement, and
some sort of plan to give Hannah a new home. And you can see that Chow is very upset, but he knows that this is the only way. He can't be a father. He cannot be a father to her. He knows with his lifestyle he can't. And he wants the best for her. And he knows that it's not with her mother, who is a working girl, let's put it politely. Right.
So, and he knows that Nellie's probably arguably the most legitimate person he knows, I'm guessing at this point. So,
or knows of, because he doesn't really know her.
No, right. Or the most legitimate person he has a connection with.
Right.
a person who can pull strings, a person with a little bit of power and money.
And also a person with the ability to just give the girl a instantly new life right away that is going to be much better than whatever she's been exposed to. Although this is where Nellie expresses reluctance, because although, yes, I am the, sort of savior of young Chinese girls, not this young.
Yeah. You can see that she's not entirely happy about the situation. She doesn't want to necessarily be involved in it, but Chow sort of convinces her. You can see that Chow is very emotional.
He really implores at
yeah,
this point, and it's from the heart. And
this
Nellie sees that.
This is probably the first thing we've seen from Chow that's completely from the heart in this show, because everything else has been about business so far or furthering his own interests. But this is the first time.
Is that any different than the first time us seeing Ah-Toy show her own personal emotion as well?
Good callback.
We see both of them now revealing the side of themselves that they cannot show because they must remain hardened.
Their human side,
their daily tasks, right? So Chow implores, and Chow says an interesting thing here in between, his imploring that she's a little white girl, which means she has a chance at a good life. If she looked Asian, then she wouldn't have a shot, and he probably wouldn't even be able to pull off this plan. Then she would have a different life. But because of that, Nellie then starts to think about what she could maybe do to help the girl, and she does say that she has a couple that she knows of that are wanting a child that she could take her to, and he approves. He approves. You can see he approves. You can see he cares. First time
he's crying.
Care about something. He's crying. All right. The scene is back. We haven't seen this in a while, Mike. Now that scene ends there, and it's very emotional. And we go from the rawness of emotion to the rawness of brawling, because Ah-Sam is back at the fight club. I guess that's the only way he knows to make up any of the chop.
He's at the Barbary Coast. Is it the Barbary Coast? He's at?
Yeah. He's back at the Barbary Coast Fight Club, run by none other than our girl, Rosita. What's her name again?
Rosalita. I think it's from I think of the Bruce Lee. I'm sorry, the Bruce Springsteen song.
Oh, right. So he goes upstairs to get paid like normal, right? After his brawl, and before he could make it to go get paid, there's Mei Ling.
And it looks like she took Lee Young's advice.
Yeah, I guess so, because he asks her, "Why are you here?" And she says, "Because you're my family, and I want your brother back. Want my brother back." And that's when he's like, "Your brother died the night you ordered your boyfriend to have him killed." So for Ah-Sam, it's like, even though I did not die in that moment physically, you killed everything else between us at that moment. And that's, he makes it very clear.
And their relationship has shifted now, because pretty much in the show, at least up until the fight with Lee Young, it was always Ah-Sam trying to reach out to his sister, trying to extend the olive branch.
Right.
And now they reverse roles. Ah-Sam doesn't want any part of it, but Mei Ling is seeking redemption here, because in the broader sense, she wants her brother back, but she also wants redemption. She wants two things. And Ah-Sam's not going to give it to her.
Yeah, man. She's regretful, and she wants forgiveness. And I wrote, it's almost as if she needs the forgiveness. She doesn't just want it. She needs it, because this whole situation has affected her. But Ah-Sam, a resounding no. And he says, worry less about me and worry about what I'm going to do to you and to the Long Z. I'm going to destroy you guys. I'm going to watch you burn. And this is when she says, I guess I should go then.
Well, he also makes it clear he's not going to kill her. He just wants her to suffer.
Right. He wants her to suffer and burn, but he's not going to, I'm not going to kill you, but here's what I am going to do. And he semi-details it, and he walks off. And that's when he meets up with Rosalita to get paid. And she goes, lovers quarrel.
And And that's probably exactly what he wants her to think. He doesn't, obviously he still doesn't want anyone to know that's his sister.
Yeah, it probably doesn't want her to think anything because his answer was,
Right.
she's nothing. And her response was great. Yeah, it looked like nothing. Very wise assy. I like her. She's a great character.
Yeah.
But Ah-Sam, as we know, went to Barbary Coast because he needs money and he just earned a little bit. But now he reveals the true motive for going there, and he says to her, "Hey, that tournament you told me about, you still need a fighter?"
And there we have it.
And scene, baby. So that's where it ends. Ah-Sam is on a mission here to make up some of that shortfall of that opium money before Father June can sniff that something's up.
Right.
A couple people know that he's in these dire straits, not too many of them, but it sets up what's going to be a very amazing next couple of episodes with now Mei Ling having been rebuffed and being told in no uncertain terms, we're fighting, like it or want it or not, we're fighting. So now she's got to go back and prepare for a fight with her brother and his tongue, because now she realizes if this goes this way, it's going to become his tongue.
Yeah. She realizes what his goal is.
His goal's her goal. They now have the same goal.
Yeah.
But with different ends.
Yeah.
Good stuff, Mike. Cannot wait. Obviously, with Ah-Sam looking to fight in a tournament, I got a feeling we're going to see a tournament coming up soon.
I think we are. I think we're going to see a good old fashioned tournament, and I'm looking forward to it. Like the no doubt that the fighting is a part of the fun of this show, and watching the choreographed fight scenes.
Oh yeah, man!
Quite a lot of fun.
You got that week. Last week we got Leary and Ah-Sam, showing down almost. We had this week Zing and Lee Yong finally going at it. Two of the best fighters on the show. So every little step of the way, there's the anticipation of the next best man up. And so let's go. I'm ready for episode 6 of season 2 for our next podcast.
Let's go. Let's go. I can't wait.
Please like and subscribe if you have not to our program, Diced Onion, a Warrior podcast. Spread the word and tell your friends about the great work that we are doing here, and tell everybody about the show Warrior. Netflix, just in about 2 weeks or so, we'll have all 3 seasons for you to binge watch. And the more we binge watch it, the more it'll show viewership, the more that Netflix might be motivated to order season 4. That's our goal here.
Yeah. Hopefully, we got to keep this thing going because this is one of the most underrated shows on TV.
Yep. And this is one of the more underrated podcasts on the web. That's it for this week's episode of Diced Onion. We will see you next week for episode 2.6. Adios.